Okay, hello everybody for the fourth edition of the Platform Automation Customer and Partner Roundtable. Great to have you here. My name is Christian. I'm product manager for Platform Automation and responsible for the BTP CLI as well as Terraform. And I have the honor to guide you through today's session. So let's get things started. As usual, you know that part of the game, the disclaimer, we will show and demo some stuff that is, let's say, forward-looking, that are future improvements, future innovation that we want to bring to you. But of course, plans might change, things might change how they look like. So that's why I have to put on this disclaimer. And then for those of you who have joined several times, you already know the game, the housekeeping rules. So we will use Teams webinar with a mandatory registration. That is something that we have to do. If you have questions throughout the sessions, we have a dedicated Q&A block at the end. Please post your session in the Q&A tool. And then we will walk them through at the end. This being recorded, and the recording will be made available on YouTube. So if you don't want to be recorded, please hang up and watch the recording afterwards. The slides will also be made available on GitHub on the landing page of this roundtable, so everybody can catch up. Frequency of the roundtable is monthly, more or less. You already see it had some delay this time, and we will only have one session for all time zones. That's why we record things. With that, what do we have on the agenda for today? We have a short section on what came up in May and June. And that will be followed by two demos. One about the topic that I have mentioned, I think in the first or second edition of the roundtable, namely the integration of BTP CLI and Terraform code snippets into the BTP Cockpit. And happy to have Anna here on the call, who is a developer in the CLI team and who is responsible for this topic, to demo that. And then during the last session, we had the request to dive a bit into the topic of importing Terraform resources and what would be our approach and what would be our recommendations there. That would be the second demo. And then we have two questions that I couldn't answer in the last roundtable that I want to follow up on. And then we have time for your Q&A, your feedback, your remarks. With that, first of all, of course, I'm just the presenter of this session. There is a big team standing behind BTP CLI and Terraform. Here you can see the faces as far as they are available internally, who provide all the stuff that I can present now. And as I said before, happy to have Anna on the call, who is giving the demo on the BTP CLI and Terraform integration. With that, what's new in May and June? There is nothing on the BTP CLI side except for the stuff that we will anyway demo. So I will directly jump to Terraform. And there we have one big news, which is a new provider for service-specific configurations. So as you know, the providers that we came up with up to now for BTP specifically kind of allowed you to create service instances. They also allowed you to parameterize those service instances. But there was a gap with regards to the service-specific configurations, and that was requested by you for quite some time. And now we started to pick that topic up with a new provider around the service-specific configurations. This provider will then be the home of all upcoming service-specific configurations. So we started now based on the requests that we got with the CI/CD service that's out in the first version. So please try it out, give us feedback, and we will continue from there. For all of you who have brought in feature requests around the service-specific configurations, I think there is one specifically for HANA, there is something for the integration suite and whatnot. I have moved all those issues to the new repository of this provider where they are a natural fit. So Don't be confused if you don't find them in the BTP provider repository. They are now in this new repository. All is there, all the history, nothing got lost. Second point that I want to mention is for the Terraform provider for Cloud Foundry. For those of you who are using the authentication via the chat token, especially with GitHub, there is, or that you might have run into an issue because the GitHub chat token is only valid for 5 minutes. And depending on your setup, you might have run into a timeout. Now, we provided a fix with the latest version of the Terraform provider for Cloud Foundry so that this token expiry will not take place anymore. And last thing, also request from your end, from the community. We now have a module for the row collection assignment out, which is an official module maintained by us, which is also available on the Terraform as well as on the OpenTofu registry. So take a look at it, give us feedback. Happy to hear from you. With this short section about the news, let's start with a sneak peek. As I said in a previous session, we have had some interviews with some folks from the administrator area on the SAP BTP side, and we brought up an idea if it would help them to provide code snippets that are context aware for the BTP CLI as well as for Terraform inside of the cockpit to make their life easier and to make this jump from ClickOps to decent automation more tangible for them. So if you see what you have done in the cockpit and you see what is then reflected as a code snippet there, this might help you a lot. And for this sneak peek, for this demo, I would like to hand over to Anna, who is, as I said, the developer for this topic, to showcase where we are with this feature. So handing over to you, Anna.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, I will try it out. If you think I'm breaking, just take over, please. Because I have internet issues today. So I started to share my screen. Can you see and hear me okay?
So hearing is a bit broken, but we can see the screen, yeah. So let's go.
Okay. If I start to broke, just in the message or something, and I will give. Okay, so hello everybody. Thanks for joining us. As Christian mentioned, this is kind of a demo for the sneak peek that we are going to release. And basically, we added this new button on the top of Cockpit that we call Script and Automation Preview. When open, will give us kind of the pairing of the command for CLI and Terraform, the snippet that belongs to the
I
page.
think there is a bit of a delay, Anna. So I think we did.
Okay, so maybe you present.
Then I will.
Yeah,
maybe
I did.
Take over. Yeah.
Yeah, please. Sorry.
So no worries. No worries. Very good. So you should now see my screen again. Let's switch to the browser. Yeah. So what Anna just showed is this button here. So you should see it here on the upper right-hand side, which is Scripting and Automation Preview. And this preview opens up a section at the lower part of your screen, bringing up four tabs. That's currently the way it is. Tab 1 and 2 are for the CLI part, and tab 3 and 4 are for the Terraform part. We have split it into the commands so that you can either focus on the commands, or if you want to learn something about the setup, we have some dedicated tabs there. Of course, we are on the global account level, so things are not that fancy. So we have, of course, the data source for the global account, and for the CLI, we have the fetching of the information. Now, what is common to all of these previews is you can enlarge it to full screen, you can reduce it. For each tab and for each code block, you have a copy and paste button to immediately transfer it to where you want to use it. And you also have a button that guides you to the corresponding documentation. So if you want to learn more about this command, you press this button, and this will open the corresponding documentation on help.sap.com, or when it comes to Terraform, it will open the corresponding area in the Terraform registry, which gives you more information about the corresponding command. Now, as I said before, this stuff is context aware. So if we switch now to the account explorer, not too much happens. You see it's still the same stuff for Terraform. For the CLI, we get some update options. Now let's switch, let's say, to the users. Once again, here we have this overview screen where we can see the list command, and for Terraform, we get also the corresponding data source. And now if we switch to the detail view, things get a bit messy. As you have seen, the commands switch and you get more options depending on the context that is there. So again, for Terraform, it's a bit more limited. Let's switch to the role collections and jump there to the roles, because there you can really see what's happening. So there we have now all the different commands around role collections, including the assign and unassign commands. And for Terraform, we have the same with regards to the resource, with regards to the data, and with regards to the management of the role collection assignments. So that's kind of what we have. Of course, this is working on the directory level as well as on the sub-account level. So if we jump into a sub-account, you immediately see again the commands get adjusted for Terraform as well as for the CLI. And as far as possible, they get filled with the information that is there. So if you take a look here at all the parameters that are there, like labels or beta features enabled, you will see that that's kind of reflecting what is there in the cockpit, which helps you, I think, a lot with the answer to the question, how do I fill the parameters? How does this sub-account be formed into a Terraform script? So that's, I think, super useful. And we have the same now with regards to Cloud Foundry, where, as you can see, the CLI, of course, switches because the BTP CLI does not cover Cloud Foundry resources. That's part of the Cloud Foundry CLI. And of course, the same for the Terraform provider, where we have the Cloud Foundry provider in place, and that's also covered. What's not yet there in this first iteration that I'm showing you is something that you would probably like to see, but we are working on that one. That's when we create a service instance to see how the parameters get filled. Because that's something, of course, that is, first of all, super cumbersome. And second of all, it's not straightforward to transfer that to the BTP CLI as well as to Terraform. Yeah, handing around this huge JSON string with the parameters with this name value pass. So this is something that we are currently working on. Having said that, I don't know, Anna, did I miss something that we wanted to show? But I think we are quite complete.
I think that's it. So you showed scope level from directory to subaccount to CF. So yeah.
So with that, I hope you liked what you saw. Of course, we are always open for feedback. We have the Q&A round later on, so you can also bring in your feedback there or your questions. As I said, this is something that, as you can clearly see, it's on our canary landscape, so it's not on live landscape yet. But this is something that you can expect later this year. I guess after the summer break, I'm quite optimistic to have that on the live landscape for you to play around and hopefully to bring more folks from ClickOps to DevOps. And with that, let's switch. I have to find my slides again. Here we go. With this sneak peek, let's switch to a question that came up, or a remark that came up last time, around the question of importing Terraform resources. How is our taking on that? What would we recommend as good practices? And yeah, we would like to spend some minutes on that to show you our ideas or our proposals, and then of course to discuss it if you have other questions, other remarks. So in general, importing via Terraform, well, the good thing is it's a Terraform standard functionality. So it's something that comes with Terraform as well as with OpenTofu. And it works. So that's kind of the good thing. Nevertheless, it's first of all quite cumbersome to do it, or it was quite cumbersome to do it. And what you have to keep in mind is that Terraform is, of course, a generic tooling. So it has no semantic knowledge about the platform it is running on. So you have AWS, you have Azure, you have BTP, and Terraform is just taking what it generically can take from the platform and transferring it to your provider. Any explicit dependencies or something like that is nothing that Terraform has under its belt. Now, I think in last December, around that time frame, Terraform or HashiCorp brought up a new feature that is called Terraform Queries, which is a quite nice enhancement, and that helps you a lot with doing imports and also with finding the resources that are not managed by Terraform. Now, having said that, there are always limitations with the import. So every Terraform provider has some limitations with regards to importing information. And there is even the case that some resources might not support import at all. So they simply cannot be managed by Terraform if they have not been created by Terraform. The limitations, I would say, in 100% of the cases. The resources that are offered by Terraform might have restrictions, but those restrictions are not because of Terraform is not capable of doing an import, but of the underlying API behaving not in a way to support the import. So this is something to keep in mind. So it's not just doing some Golang coding in the Terraform provider. It's usually an issue that is deeper down the line with regards to the API that we use to manage the resources. And when it comes to our providers, if there are limitations, they are documented in the corresponding GitHub repositories. Here is the example for the Terraform provider for SAP BTP, where we clearly state what's importable, what's not importable, and where do we have limitations with regards to the import. Now that's kind of the generic part. So Terraform supports import. There are some features within the Terraform framework that make life a bit easier. Now let's take a look at a setup that you are probably facing, which is the partially managed setup. So with a partially managed setup, we have parts of your sub account being managed by Terraform and parts of your sub account not being managed by Terraform, which is quite usual from my perspective because you start small with let's say setting up the sub account, setting up maybe the trust configuration, and do the rest manually to get some confidence in Terraform and how things work. And then you move forward and you would like to expand the usage of Terraform. And then you want to import all the stuff. Now, what is important, what is to stress here is if you do imports, do it in an iterative way. So don't try to do a big bang on day one. Try to import first these resources, then that resources, and so on, because that gives you a better way to pin down issues or errors. Now, before you even start with importing resources into Terraform, there is one step that I would highly recommend to do before, and that's analyze your setup on your sub account, because the sub account certainly has grown over time, and clean it up. So remove the stuff that you don't need anymore. So maybe there are entitlements that are not needed anymore. You gave them at some point in time because you thought they might be used, but then you decided differently. You might have service instances that now are managed centrally and do not need to be there in the sub account and so on. So every resource that you don't have to import is a good resource. Let's say it that way. Then, especially in a partially managed approach, there is one additional step that you have to go, and that's determining unmanaged resources. Because Terraform, as you know from the drift detection, can only take a look at the resources that are managed by Terraform. All the other resources that are there are basically invisible. And well, if you're using HashiCorp Cloud as an offering, as a commercial offering, then you get this determination of unmanaged resources for free, quotes unquote. But even if you don't use it, it's not rocket science to extract that information. I will show in a second how you can do that. And once you have determined that, well, import the missing resources. And here for BTP, you have two options. One is the Terraform exporter for SAP BTP, which is a binary or a CLI that we developed, which contains this semantical information that I mentioned before. Or you can use Terraform queries when it's not needed that you have the semantical information. And once you have imported your resources, this is also something that I will show, you can align it with your policies and conventions. So thinking about you will import entitlements in the vanilla way, like Terraform would do it. And then you want to move that into a module that you have prepared, then that's easily possible with another tool. So yeah, I would say the truth is in the code. So let's take a look at what we have. So you should see my VS Code now. And what we have, and if you don't see it, please let me know. What we have is a simple setup with regards to a sub account. So we have some naming conventions that we put in place, and then we create a sub account, and we have some trust configuration set up via our Terraform stuff. That's all part of the Terraform state. So if we do a Terraform state list, what we see is we have this module that contains the UUID, and for the sub account, we have the sub account itself, and we have the custom IDP. Okay. Now we know that within the sub account, there is also a Cloud Foundry environment, and we know that we would also really like to manage the entitlements that are there in this sub account, because we want to have a uniform way how we entitle sub accounts. So following the guide that we just discussed before, the first thing that we want to do is to analyze if there are entitlements that we don't want to import. For this analysis tasks, of course, you can do them via Terraform, via data sources, but I personally would recommend the BTP CLI for these tasks, because the BTP CLI has this option to format your output via JSON, and so you can easily analyze what is there. Now, I know that within the sub account that I want to import, that's existing for quite some time, and there have been some entitlements that shouldn't be there. And I know Kima shouldn't be there and HANA shouldn't be there, but I also know that sometimes that was entitled, but is not used anymore. So what I will do now is and I have to copy and paste that, I will now do a listing of the accounts entitlements for my sub account. So I have targeted my BTP CLI to the sub account that I want to analyze. And then I use jQuery or JQ in order to find out, do I have some Kima or HANA stuff in there that shouldn't be there. So what I do then is running into an error because I timed out. Let's do that again. Yes, I want. Okay, then let's do a BTP target again. It's number 10. Okie dokie. And now this should give me something back. Let's do it on the upper part of the screen. And I see, okay, in this sub account, I have the Chemo runtime, which is AWS. I have the HANA Cloud, which is the plan HANA, and I don't want to have that. So I want to clean it up. And here again, I can use the BTP CLI to do the cleanup stuff. It's just the command assign, and then I will disable those two commands. And it's running, and for those of you who have been working with BTP, we all know entitlements take some time until they get entitled, but also until they get not entitled anymore. So let's check how far we are. Okay, so step 1 is done. The entitlements have been cleaned up. I don't need any thoughts about that anymore, and I can continue with the next step, determining what is managed and what is not managed. And here, the Terraform query functionality is quite nice to use. For those of you who have not yet worked with that, so Terraform query is located in a special file, or let's say with a special file extension, which is tfquery.hcl. So all files that have this ending, this postfix, they can contain those list blocks. Now for Terraform, for our Terraform providers, we provide those list resources. So as you can see here, I want to list all the environment instances that are there in this sub account. And then for the execution of this query, what you can do is do a Terraform query. So that's a dedicated command. And you say, I want to have the JSON. Now what you see here is it's a stream of information. So you get a stream of JSON that is line separated, which contains the information. So that's not easy to read. So let's do, let's put that into a dedicated file. Exactly. And then let's open it. Let's format it. And what we will see now is that this stream contains a sub-account environment instance. It has all the information in there that you need. And what's especially interesting is it also has the resource identity in there. So if you have already done some imports with Terraform, you know that every resource for the import needs an identity, an identifier. And this identity is part of this Terraform query stuff. The interesting point is that also the Terraform state has this information. So if you take a look at the Terraform state, here for the sub account, you see there is also this identity block. So every instance that is managed, or every resource that is managed by Terraform, has an identity that is manifested in the state. As you can see here, same for the trust. With Terraform query, you also get the identity of the resources that are available on the platform, independent of if they are managed by Terraform or not. So basically what you have to do, and in the age of AI, that's no rocket science, you have to create a script that compares what's in the state and what's not in the state, but in the query.json file. And I created such a script, and I assure you that's 100% not written by me. So that's purely Claude code. And what I will do now is I will execute it. So let's get rid of that. It's called diff identity. So it asked me where is the query. So where is the result of the query? That's the default value. Where is my state? I have it now locally. Of course, you might have it remotely. And then how should I name my output files? And with that, it now should have created an output file, which exactly contains the one resource that was detected by the query file. So with that, or with this approach, you can now create an inventory of all the resources that are not managed by Terraform, which gives you kind of a task list. What resources do I have to import? And yeah, do I want to manage them via Terraform? Do I not want to manage them via Terraform? And especially if you then want to do it by hand, you also have the import identity there immediately. So now for the import, let's walk down the two paths that I mentioned before. First of all, the vanilla path, I would call it. So what you can do now is use this Terraform query and generate the code that you want to use as an import. So this is something that comes with the default Terraform CLI. It's Terraform query minus generate config minus out, and then you have to give it a name. So with that, what happens is you get a file, which, and as you have seen, I did not do any magic there, which contains, first of all, the important import block that advises Terraform what to import and where to import it to. And it also contains the resource block. So it generates, based on the information that is available on the platform, the resource block. So you don't have to think about that. So let's copy that and put it into the main file and adjust it a bit. And this is something that you always have to do. So as you see, I get already a proposal that the sub account ID should be moved. Then yeah, timeouts, we don't have that. Status is also not important because that's a computed field. So there is some knowledge that you need to have then to refine the output of this generated code and adjust it to what you need. And with that, let's do a Terraform plan to see if there is, and why do I always miss the T? If there is something to import. And what it says, okay, I have one resource to import, 0 to add, 0 to change, 0 to destroy. That's good. So yeah, let's do the import. Let's do a Terraform apply and the import.tf plan. And this now added the corresponding resource to our Terraform state. So if we do a Terraform state list, what we see now is that we also have the environment and instance in there. That's one approach that you can do in order to import resources. That's vanilla Terraform functionality, nothing that we contribute there. Now, the second option that I mentioned is the Terraform exporter. The Terraform exporter is something that we created in order to make your life easier with regards to importing resources. The Terraform exporter has different commands in order to structure the import flow. So the first thing that I will do now, and the Terraform exporter for SAP BTP is called, from a CLI perspective, BTP-TF. And what I will do now with this CLI is I will create a JSON file that contains all the entitlements that are there on the platform in my sub account. So this will now collect all the information about the resources and we'll put them into a JSON file. Now it's not super breathtaking because I'm just using one resource here. Nevertheless, this can of course be used for multiple resources. And what you can see here now, okay, there are several resources that are detected on the platform, and I just want to have a fraction of them. So let's exchange that. So I want to have the cloud logging, the alert notification, and the build code part. And with this information, I can now tell the exporter to use the information in this JSON file and just import those 3 resources, or give me the code that is necessary to import those 3 resources. So let's add that. As you can see, we have now a different command, which is btptf export by JSON. This is using some default configuration, so it's using this resource name here and using the sub-account ID. What it does now is basically the same than the Terraform query. So it's crafting the import blocks, and then it's creating or generating the Terraform configuration for those sub-account entitlements. What's important to mention here, which is not visible in this demo, if we would also import the sub-account, the tool would also link the entitlements, so the sub-account IDs from the entitlements, to the sub-account that gets imported, because that's something that we know as providers for BTP, but that Terraform doesn't know. So in this scenario now, as we have done it, we have to take the resource file, and as you can see here, it's again generated. So I just copied that over to our main file, append it. And then we have those import blocks. As you can see, the structuring is again different compared to Terraform query. So we separate the files because I would assume that at some point in time we would want to remove those import files. Also, they are idempotent. So let's move that one out here. Let's delete that because we don't need that anymore. Let's remove that, so clean up a bit. So what we have now is we have those 3 resources that we want to import. We have the entitlements. We should, of course, also put in the BTP sub-account here. Yep, to have it pointed to the right one. And we also have the corresponding import blocks. That's good. So what we can do now is again do the import. Let's close that one. Let's close that one. And try another round of import now based on the Terraform exporter. And as usual, there is first the refreshing of the state, which takes a bit and hopefully works. And again, as you can see, we have 3 entitlements. 3 should be imported. Cool. Then let's do a Terraform apply. Import TF plan. And all 3 are imported. All 3 should be there in the state. Exactly. Here we go. There are the addresses of our 3 entitlements. They are there in the state. That's cool. So let's clean things up again. Remove the import block, remove the inventory that we got, blah, blah, blah. Remove the plan, remove the missing estate, and remove that. Looks a bit better now. Okay, so let's recap what we did. We had a basic setup with sub-accounts and sub-account trust configuration. We used the Terraform query approach to import the environment instance. And then we used the BTP exporter or the Terraform exporter for SAP BTP in order to import the entitlements. Both approaches are valid. As you have seen, you have to massage the code a bit to be fitting to your setup. Now, there's one more thing that I would like to show you. And that's kind of now, as you have the stuff managed via Terraform, you might want to also transfer it to the setup that you have established over the time. So maybe those 3 entitlements are exactly the ones that you manage via a module. So let's replace this code and bring in the module that you would like to use. Okay, so what would happen now if we do a Terraform apply? We would run into an issue because, as we have seen, the entitlements have within the state this address. So what would Terraform think now? It would say, hey, those 3 entitlements are not there in the configuration, so I have to delete them. But there are 3 other entitlements that are there. So yeah, let's create them. And this is something that you don't want to have. And in order to mitigate that, there is another open source tool that is called TF Auto Move, which creates the move blocks, which is also something that is a quite useful construct within Terraform, which allows you to move resources in the state without doing any changes. And as you can see here, the tool detected now that 3 resources have been moved. There is no need to recreate them. They just have been moved. And what the tool does is creates you those move blocks, which is great. So what you can do now is with these move blocks, do a Terraform apply. So let's do it quite straightforward without planning. What could possibly go wrong? Refreshing, come on. Yep. Unfortunately, what is not so cool from Terraform is it doesn't tell you that there is a move. So in contrast to the import, you don't see it. You really have to check what is happening here. And it tells you, yeah, okay, this resource will be moved to something else, and this resource will be moved to somewhere else. So you can execute that. And if we now take a look at the state, what you see is now that those 3 resources that have been entitlements before have been moved. Okay, with that, we are done. So jumping back to the slides, what we did is we analyzed our setup. I have to go to presentation mode. We analyzed our setup with the BTP CLI, cleaned up what was not needed. We determined what was managed and unmanaged using the Terraform query functionality and the state that we have. And then based on that information, we used 2 tools. One was the Terraform query, and the other one was the Terraform exporter for SAP BTP. And yeah, we also showed that it's possible. So you don't need to be afraid that you cannot then move stuff around after you have imported it. We aligned it with our module approach. And that was it for the import part. And that was also it for the demos. So I hope that that could help you a bit with wrapping your head around importing resources. It's not trivial. It's nothing that you would do on a Friday afternoon, but it's also not important to do, impossible to do. Sorry. It's important to do, but it's not impossible to do. Okay, then last session we had 2 open questions that I want to answer. One was around service instance sharing for user-provided services. So there was some discussion going on, and I was not sure with regards to the Cloud Foundry provider. And the bottom line is, yes, service instance sharing is possible. Everything is there within the provider for user-provided services to do that. And I also described that in the discussion that I've referenced here. Then, as we presented last time, the Cloud Connector, there was the question, or there was the remark that, yeah, it would be cool to have a dynamic hardening of the Cloud Connector configurations based on the usage telemetry. And I approached the folks from the Cloud Connector team, and they said, yeah, that's super interesting. And we did not yet hear about that. Hence, we have not planned it. Now, due to the fact that Cloud Connector is a settled SAP product, I have, if the person who requested it is in this call or sees the recording, I have to advise you to please open an influence request in this BTP campaign that I've referenced here, so that the Cloud Connector team can pick that up. So they were definitely interested. They said that's an interesting approach. And if there is this influence request, I'm quite sure that folks will pick it up. Now there is one more thing before Q&A. I have a call to action for you. And what we are currently doing, of course, what we are currently doing is we are looking into spec-driven development for infrastructure as code, namely for the SAP BTP. And we have a mock-up in place. We have some clickable prototype in place. And I would like to hear from you if you would be interested to shape this tool, which will help you with the support of agentic AI to craft your infrastructure as code in a, let's say, very hardened and compliant way, in contrast to doing just one-shot wipe coding in the preferred tool for AI that you might have. So please let me know if you are interested in supporting us here, in checking what's happening there. This will then be an interview of 1 hour plus minus half an hour around this topic, where you will get some questions, some tasks that you have to fulfill to give us the option to see if we are on the right track with regards to how we structure things, and if you like what you see. So just ping me via this email so that I have your contact data, and then we will get in touch with you and schedule interviews, probably after the summer break. In general, if you are interested in more such activities like customer engagement initiatives, you can also let me know. Then I can propagate your information to the right team that does the user research in general for SAP BTP. And with that, the usual call to action. So if you would love to share your story around BTP CLI and/or Terraform, what you have done, where you have maybe made not so great experiences, where you have made great experience, just let us know and let us share. Happy to hear from you, from kind of the customers, and not only from me, who is a bit biased maybe, how things work. And with that, we are at the Q&A part. So if you have any questions, any remarks, you can either throw them in the Q&A, or as an alternative, you can also raise your hand, then I can hopefully unmute you. And thanks for the feedback on the integration, and also thanks for the demo. I think Rob, you requested it the last time, right? That was your ask. Okay, so good. Yeah, good that you liked it. So I think that's really something that is on top of everybody's mind who's doing Terraform and is starting with Terraform, and then that's kind of a hurdle to overcome to do the imports, but I think it's definitely doable. So no questions. That's unbelievable. No questions, no remarks. So if there are no more questions, then I would like to say, okay, yeah, just keep up the good work. Thank you. We will do our best. Having said that, we will have a summer break now. So the next roundtable will probably take place in September. So there will be no roundtable in August. And there was one raised hand. Is the question still there or not? So please raise your hand again. Yep. So so you should now be able to unmute yourself.
Hi.
Hi.
So I have a question. Currently, we are planning to implement Terraform. So we had a POC inside in our organization. And if you want to import the existing BTP setup to the Terraform, we need to use BTP exporter or BTP TF exporter and BTP Terraform importer?
So you can use the exporter, which is a tool that we provide, which has some features that, like I said, if you import the sub account and the corresponding environment instance, then we already take care that things get wired up correctly.
Okay.
We also sort out, to the best of our knowledge, the entitlements that are by default provided when you create the sub account, so that you don't import them, because they in 90% of the cases in all the old sub accounts, it makes no sense. If you don't want to use that tool for what reason whatsoever, because I know that within companies there are constraints, there are guidelines with regards to the usage of open source tools that forbid you to use this tool. That's okay. That doesn't prevent you from importing stuff. Then I would recommend to use the Terraform query functionality that I've shown, because that's part of the Terraform CLI that you anyway use. And that's something that you can use there. Now, I have to state that, to the best of my knowledge, this functionality is not yet there with OpenTofu. So if you're using OpenTofu, you have to probably find another approach to do the import. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you.
Welcome. Any further questions? Any remarks on the sneak peek that you saw, maybe? So Cedric already gave some feedback there in the chat. If not, then let's close the call. Thanks for attending. Thanks for sharing your feedback. As I said, we will be back in September, I would say, after the summer break. So for those of you who also have a break, have vacation, have a great vacation. Have a great time. See you next time, hopefully, with another round of news, sneak peeks, and demos. With that, happy terraforming, happy BTP CLIing. See you next time. Bye, folks.